we go. So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. Today is the last day of March. This is Heather Wiskus coming to you live from Get Me Some Green from Women in Weeds, sponsored by ULife. And today on episode 5, I'm very, very excited to bring to you Ellen Tacher. She has got one of the most amazing backstories I've ever heard in the industry. So as we go through Women in Weed and we celebrate women in the industry, we celebrate this female plant, we celebrate female rising into business and really taking a hold of an industry wholeheartedly. I can't think of a better person to talk to than someone that's been paving the way here in Charlotte. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce you to my guest today, Miss Ellen Tacher with Prime Sunshine.
Hi, nice to meet you. And what came to mind was when we talk about the female and the female plant, talk about sexual inequality.
Oh,
goes all the way down to the plant, doesn't it? It's amazing.
I don't think people really understand that what most of the cannabinoids we're getting and the flowers and the buds, that's coming from the female plant. That's not coming from the male plant. The male plant produces seeds.
The male plant is legal and you can buy that at Harris Teeter in public. So
isn't that funny?
Yep, only the women are illegal.
Only the women are illegal. Mm-hmm. We're that powerful. Get your power on, ladies, and get yourself illegal. So Ellen, talk to us about your journey, because I know that in the industry, you have had such an amazing journey, both from a professional standpoint prior to moving into this industry, but as just a woman and what you've had to endure and go through. And I'd love to share what you feel comfortable sharing, but I think understanding why women get into this industry and why we take this journey is so very, very valuable for how the industry is going to be growing.
No, so I understand. So that's a really hard question to answer, because most people, when they start a company, they wake up, they have a business plan, they write the Secretary of State, they get their business credentials, and that's the normal way to have a business. But this wasn't a business when I started. Well, I never started a business, and even when I started selling it and providing it to help people, it wasn't a business. I didn't know it would be a business. But for anyone, I would say anyone who's thinking of starting, what's in my heart and why I can work a 15-hour day is that I love human beings. And the fact that I actually get to wake up every day and I know that I'm affecting people's lives around the globe, around the planet. I would have never asked anyone that knew me in my past. Nobody would ever told you I would be doing this. I've always been in the corporate world, working for corporate companies. And
how did you make that leap? Like what, because what I've been finding as I interview amazing women in this industry, I've been finding that everyone has a story, a purpose, a reason that they decided, you know what, modern medicine is not working. I need something that's going to make me healthy, that's not going to kill me at the same time. So what was your catalyst?
So I have about 16 different layers of PTSD, right? So some people have PTSD, but then there's people like me that have it over and over and over again. So I have been, I've gone through sexual abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, divorce, death of a father at a very young age, just multiple traumas. When I finally was at my lowest, I was on 300 milligrams of Wellbutrin, 60 milligrams, which I think is the highest dose of Prozac.
Yeah, it is.
5 milligrams of Xanax. And then I would kind of go back and forth between that and Valium, and I would mix it with 2 bottles of wine, and I'd have myself a great night. And I was going through a divorce. So I was really just a hot mess, just an ugly, hot mess on 2 feet. And I remember my dog got attacked by another dog. It was a mix of 2 different breeds, and I'm not going to mention a breed because I love all breeds of dogs. And whenever I do, it seems to backfire on me.
Right.
I bled out in my backyard. And then my dog bled out. So his life was saved and my life was saved because I lived right around the corner from the trauma unit at Carolinas Medical Center.
Okay.
And then I had like 14 surgeries and I ended up becoming 64% disabled on this side. So
Oh my gosh, that's incredible, because I don't think people understand how traumatizing things like that can be and how that trauma affects you for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, and that was trauma on top of other trauma. So I tried. I don't think we called it CBD back then, Heather. I don't know what it was. You and I met at a meeting.
Yep.
What? I don't remember.
We were introduced. I can't remember who created.
Oh, I remember who. Yes, now.
But I honestly can't. But I remember you came to one of the meetings. I was in BNI at the time, and we met and we had a really great conversation, and crossed paths several times since, and then slowly started working together. And we've been carrying your products now for like 3 years.
I would venture to say anybody who's listening that I meet, since I've been home at COVID, I guess I haven't really met a lot, but I meet women all the time, wonderful women. And Heather was the only woman I'd ever met that knew what I was doing, and really loved her energy, and she's extremely driven. And you know what happens to female plants like us when we're very driven? We're kind of pushed aside and called something else. But anyways, after going through the attack, I started trying different brands. I didn't even know what it was. And some worked, some didn't. Some months were better, others weren't. And what I needed was consistency, because I have.
So no, but at the time you injured yourself, it was illegal, right?
Yes.
So we're not even talking about a legal supplement. You just knew that hemp, it was going to help you.
One of my
so
friends,
you were finding what you could, correct?
one of my friends' older brothers was doing something with multi-level marketing with back then with like, it wasn't even Prime Your Body. It was one of those other ones. And that's how I got sucked in. And I did try it. I tried it at one of those meetings and I didn't know if it was real. But what I needed was consistency, because I have such severe mental health issues and it runs in my family. And I'm good now. I can honestly say that. So, I just only pray and hope that every day when I wake up that I can still be stable. But long story short, I needed consistency. So I found a specific seed that is owned by a specific family in a specific region where it's it's a very fertile, the most fertile soil in the United States. It wasn't anything that I knew about. And I drove there and they were just happy that you couldn't transport it. And they were under the hemp pilot project at that time. So they were.
Yes. I remember you telling me that. So talk to me a little bit about the hemp pilot project, because I think for a lot of people, they don't understand what that is.
Well, I'll give you an idea. In 1937, the federal marshals came to our farm, took them at gunpoint. I have some really cool, I think I've showed you those photos.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures of it. It's got
shut the farm down, confiscated all the hemp, and then the farm hands went around the entire farm and collected all the heirloom seeds, because that seed is internationally pedigreed, proprietary, and certified, and it's owned, right? So
and I don't think people understand the magnitude. There are certain strains, just like you're talking about, that they're owned, they're proprietary, no one knows. And and we're not dealing with a formula, right? Because there's no formula with a seed. We're dealing with genetic makeup, the splicing and the creation or the longevity or history of a seed. So just like when you see other companies say they have a private strain, it's that genetic compounding. So that's what Ellen's sharing with us, is that the genetic compound of the seed that she uses. How long does it date back, Ellen?
So I've been told 4,000 years, I've been told 6,000 years, but if you really wanted to be fair to the seed, you could say that the family bought it and owned it. It came over on a ship from England in the early 1800s. I don't want to, it is exactly 1804, something like that. So for me, it made a difference. And I only took it because somebody told me to, and they knew what a hot mess I was. And that's how I learned that all CBD brands are not equal. And that seed resonated with me. I mean, there's certainly many wonderful products and brands out there. You carry probably, the best of any of you and one other store, great products. And I think that you all, from what I understand, do a good job of matching that person with the right product. So you guys take the
And
time
that's
to
important.
understand that.
Thank you for saying that, because that means a lot to me coming from you, but it's
If you
important
want
for people
cheap,
to
then go to a
understand.
smoke shop, a vape shop.
Yeah.
Like if you want high quality, you go to Heather, and Heather, it just
Thank you. Appreciate
it
that.
appears that from outside that you seem to really, which is what I did, match the right product with what the person is suffering from.
Well, that's what I try to teach people when they come in.
Valuable.
Cannabinoids help every biological being. There's no doubt about it, but not every formula is great for everyone or every ailment that someone's dealing with. So it is really important, but I want to talk a little bit more about how you made that jump, because previously you were in a very professional background and in a very public situation.
Mhm.
To openly say, I'm dealing with this trauma, I'm dealing with this mental anguish, and I'm seeking something outside the normal medical scope for help. That had to be absolutely terrifying for you as a woman, because we're talking about women are still very suppressed in the workplace and in the business world. For you to have to come up to that and say, I could potentially lose my job, but I'd rather lose my job than my mind. So this is the way I need to go. How did you decide to make that jump, and how well or not well was that received for you?
I don't know, because I wasn't consciously building a business. I don't know
Right.
when that decision was made. It happened. And then when I was going through a divorce, one of the accountants or the attorneys who we were broke. We were on food stamps and Medicaid. I guess I shouldn't bring that up, but we not a,
No,
I think,
it's your journey, and I think it's beautiful that you're willing to share that,
I
because
think living in poverty the way that we were can make you crazy. So if we look at all the crime and everything that's happening in the world, and it's mostly in poverty stricken countries and states and cities in our country, it can really make you crazy. It can it ruins your marriage. It's awful. So I had no money and I was homeless for 2 years, and I was dealing with mental health issues. So I lived in a closet. While I lived in somebody's closet, I drove Uber and Lyft. And then I took a nanny job in Myers Park. So I hope she's not listening to this, but they didn't realize they hired a nanny with an MBA. And when I added all the miles up and I multiplied it by 0.54 federal miles, they owed me like $600 in gas. But it's like, if you're going to hire a nanny with an MBA, you better be ready to pay for my gas, right? So there was a few hours before I would, clean their house before the kids came home, and I would have my headset on and I was working with the designer. And I'll have to give a shout out to Beth Whiteside at Atlantic Packaging and Label. They knew that I was not well, and they also knew I was broke, and they knew I was homeless, and they printed my first labels for free. Who does that?
love that. I love when companies see the potential of someone.
That's an international company. They're huge.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Packaging. They're all over the world. I don't know how they did it or how I got
that. Gives me chills. I love to hear stuff like that.
Right. So when you look at the label on our bottles, that came from someone that knew my situation and I don't even know them. They're in Wilmington, North Carolina. I've never even met them. So
that's so cool. I know I'm going to look at your label slightly differently now and think like, wow, you know what? That label's got a cool story. And that's why we're doing these episodes, because these little nuggets, these little stories, they help people. And when people realize that, listen, you can do amazing things. I mean, when you can come from where you were to where you are now, it's beautiful. So you went on your journey looking for something to help you.
Yeah.
Couldn't find it with the products out there. So you said, you know what, I'm just going to go right to seed to stores. And that's how you met the farmers that you partner with now, correct?
I found actually at Shands Hospital, they in the early 90s, when cannabis research was funded under Reagan, they provided that, they used that seed. So you see the results of the studies from the NIH in their website. So
gotcha.
Now for farmers, there are other farmers growing it. And it's interesting. It also went to the moon on a rocket. If you Google
moon weed, no,
it went to the moon through. I don't know if it was through. It's if you just Google that,
why would they do that? Like what?
Well, the farm is aligned with a medical school and a research community and the Hemp Research Institute. So
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if you're going to need a medicine while you're in space that covers a gamut of several things, why not look at a nutrition-based or a plant-based derivative that you can grow? It makes sense. Makes perfect sense to me. But I think it's kind of funny that we're talking about seeds on the moon. I just picture like this little seed in a
Oh
monkey.
no, a plant. They brought a plant to the moon.
Very
I'll
cool.
have to text you that. I'll send you that article. And I did not know what I was doing. All I knew is that I felt better. All I knew is that one day I was taking this stuff and I was at my brother's apartment and the sky was blue and I had hope. I remember the one day after the attack and being really just without my friends. They had to come bathe me, and then my dog, I couldn't. It was a long time coming. But I remember and no drug ever did this for me. No pharmaceutical drug. I remember I walked out that door and I had a feeling of hope. It was like this, I had been living in a feeling of doom, like doomsday every day, doomsday, what bad could happen today. There was a black cloud over my head, to wow, the sky was blue, the sun was out, it was beautiful. And all of a sudden my heart just, I just started feeling better, but I had no idea it was from that stuff that my friend's older brother gave me. And he's a former NFL hockey player, Stanley Cup winner.
So what did he give you? Did he give you CBD that you're using now? The same?
No. It was whatever many 7 years ago, whatever was the multi-level marketing. It may have just been isolate. I really honestly don't know. But I know it wasn't from America, and I know it was from Europe, and I know that it was different every month. It was a different color, so I learned.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it came because it was coming from different farms. So there was the same seed, the same farm, the same soil, the same geographic location, the same water, the same sun, the same moon, and the same stars were not in the same bottle. So it wasn't consistent enough for somebody like me that needs it consistent, until I found that seed. That seed got me off of all of those medications. I still do take Prozac. Once I started working remotely last March, I could feel myself. I'm alone. So you know what? I don't like taking pharmaceutical drugs. I'm not a big advocate, but I'm an advocate of doing what you need to do.
Right, and what you need to do
for yourself. Yes, and I wasn't interested in.
So you hunted the seed down. I think that's so you hunted the seed down, and then once you did that, you started working with formulations that work best for you. What does that journey look like? Because most people aren't willing to jump into that. So I know I wasn't. I'm more or less find products and I share them with people based on what I know about them and that they meet our criteria. But for you, you were looking for something very specific, the compound specific to you. So what does that look like? Because I know in the past, you and I have talked about extraction methods and the fact that you put terpenes back into the product. And I don't think a lot of people understand what that means. And I do believe you were one of the first companies that was doing that. So I would like to hear about why, how you started to develop the formulation that has now become Prime Sunshine.
Well, for me, terpenes I think for me, everybody has to find out for themselves. But for me, our plant produces a very expansive and very long terpene profile. I didn't know what that meant a long time ago. And I remember them saying, oh, look at that. It's the terpene profile's off the chart. I didn't really know no one knew what that meant. This is not an industry you go to college for. This is not a book that you can read and learn. We didn't even have the word CBD back then. It wasn't even legal. No. So it's not like it was, that's a really good question to ask someone that has a business plan, right? But I didn't have that. So my goal was to sell it to other women who I met in those chat groups on Facebook who were hot messes like myself. We're in our 50s, we're postmenopausal, going through divorce, drinking, emotional, not knowing it was really from menopausal. Not one male doctor told me that, so I met a female doctor, but okay, a little late. And all I did was help them so that whatever I sold them allowed me to drive back up to Kentucky and get more and bring it down. And that was it. I only provided it to the women, the other screwed up women I was meeting online.
Right.
And one of them, Shelly Starbuck, if you're out there, she's in she's in Coatesville, Indiana, like in the middle of a cornfield. She started on Prime Sunshine like 5 years ago. Now she's a reseller out there. She has her own little business. And, so we've also been able to help other families survive because she had lost her business. The state put a highway through her occupational therapy office, and they had to.
Wonderful. I love when that happens. Eminent domain is a beautiful
right
thing.
So she got she's had a wonderful quality of life lift, enough to be able to survive what she went through, and now she helps other women.
So you started with, I'm assuming you started with like one potency, one strain. How did you evolve? Because I know Prime right now has several different strains that you do. What if you could go back and talk to the Ellen that was living in a closet and in pain? What would you tell her? What would you say about the movement you're about to make into this industry? What would you like if you could go back and say, hey, don't be afraid of this plant, or hey, lean into this? What kind of advice would you give another woman walking in your shoes, looking at ways to not only heal, but help other people heal as well?
Like if somebody wants to feel better, is that what you're saying?
Well, just if another woman's like thinking about going down this journey for pain, what advice would you give them? Because I know it's scary. It still has a stigma, and it's going to have a stigma for a long time. I tell women that I talk to and other people in the industry, I said, we're dealing with a plant that has had a negative stigma for almost 100 years. Don't think it's going to go away in 2. We're looking at another 100 years to reverse all of that 100%. I think we're making massive strides quickly, but it's still going to take some time for the real use, and to marry medical and nutritional together, it's going to take more time.
Well, it's really interesting because I feel like I have a little bit of a benefit. I had decided not to grow my company and just stay where we were. And it, but the company kept growing, so I had to keep catching up with it.
Right.
But I would say, can you repeat your question? I got distracted over here by my
It's okay. My question was, what would you say to a woman at the precipice of pain and anxiety, looking at the potential of using a cannabis derivative? What would you tell them?
One of the benefits of also being a dispensary or having a little store for a little while before you guys and other stores opened up all around was that I got to talk to people. A lot of brands just woke up and started a company solely to make money. They were not involved in verbal exchange with customers. They just weren't. They're just a brand, and they have investors and they trade on Wall Street. So I got the opportunity to start at the ground level and really find out, like, people would come in literally and say, my daughter's vagina was just reconfigured so that she could have pleasure, and I'd be like, okay, that's interesting.
Oh my gosh, I've had people come in and say personal things to me, and I just sit there and I'm like,
just last week I had a man that wanted to kill himself, and he wanted CBD to save him, and I said, look, CBD is not going to save you. I need you to get into your car and drive to, I told him a couple different places. I actually got him an appointment at Tryon Medical at my doctor's office, not just to be seen, but to get all this other testing that I'm sure that he needs,
Right.
But my point
it's not a be all end all, but I mean,
it's not like you go to a job every day.
Right. It's still, I mean, I think for women in the industry, there's still a lot of pushback. I mean, I know I, as a mom, and I think I've said this in other episodes, when we first opened our store, we've been in the industry for well over a decade. I never say more than a decade because it ages me too much. So I've just decided I will perpetually be in the industry for a decade until I die, never more. But when we opened, our daughter was like really upset. She's like, Mom, why'd you have to open a weed store? And she was super embarrassed by the shift that my husband and I were making from working with doctors to opening up a retail space. And now she's starting to come into her own, especially after COVID, because so many of her friends have benefited from the anxiety relief from CBD, just like you discussed on how it helped you. So I think it's really important that we remove that shame from the plant. But isn't it funny that not only do women shame themselves by the way they look, but we also shame the very plant that heals us? Like, when are we going to stop
You
shaming?
know what's even shaming is, so let's say 2 years ago, I started calling on Harris Teeter, whose corporate headquarters are less than 2 miles from my house.
Right.
All right.
Harris Teeter is a grocery store here in the Carolinas for those watching elsewhere.
Okay, so you would think that that would be super cool for them to support local, and there are certain parts of our business that support North Carolina farmers as well. We have other products that support North Carolina farmers and Tennessee farmers,
Right.
and South Carolina farmers actually, and they would not put. There's not a single woman-owned company on those shelves at Harris Teeter.
Interesting.
There's not even a local company, so every time I go into Harris Teeter, it's like, wow, here I'm supporting a local company. I choose them over Publix, but they're not supporting our local community.
Yeah, you see that a lot. So how do you feel like we're going to be able to change that as the industry starts to grow? How do you think we can do a better job supporting women in the industry?
A couple things. Sorry, where are you?
Isn't technology blissful?
Sorry, I can't see where to.
I think you have an alarm set, maybe.
All right, so
how do you think we can combat that and really grow as a women industry and get out there a little bit better?
Well, I think it's really interesting. If you look at the times that we're in, look how far we've grown as a country since last March. If you think about where you were last March before COVID versus where you are now, I know my entire
just as an industry, this industry has completely changed in just the span of a year. I mean, first we started with CBD, and now I know they're changing it. We have to call it hemp, and now we've got Delta 8, and now we're dealing with flower. Like, it's taking off, and I don't know if they're going to be able to keep it under control. So you're right. Other industries are failing, but this industry is growing exponentially.
If somebody's interested in really finding out about what helps them, you go into a store like yours and you just buy, like, what, depending on whether you have sleep issues, or I know for me, I was drinking alcoholically because I was sick and didn't know it. But I will say that CBD helped me not crave alcohol. Right now, I didn't know that.
Interesting.
At that time, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes. You're not the first person I've heard this from. I've heard from several people that CBD helped them with the desire to use alcohol to escape situations. So,
by the way, that's from my daughter in New York. That call, she just texted me. She said, "We just became legal here. Anywhere you can smoke a cigarette, you can light up."
Oh, that's awesome.
That was what that call was.
What state is she in again?
Huh?
What state is she in again?
Not New York City.
Oh, that's great.
Now she probably will not be moving away, I'm sure.
Do you blame her?
No. I mean, she has severe anxiety, and she figured out how to use cannabis as medicine before I even knew she was consuming it. So the kids.
You know what? I've heard that from a lot of people. I know my mom hates when I say this, but my mom self-medicated with cannabis my whole life. It's how she dealt with her anxiety. My mom has bipolar disorder. So it's how she dealt with her bipolar. And my mom went through a divorce too. So I think women that are coming from earlier stages, and especially women that are now the baby boomers getting older, they've just experienced levels of discrimination that my generation just hasn't had, and the generations after me won't have, because there's been a lot of work in the female industry on that, so I haven't seen a lot, but there's more to come. Like I told my daughter, I said, your daughter will see less discrimination than you will, and it will just keep perpetuating. That's really the goal. But my mom used to medicate forever, and I'll never forget, as a kid, I found her bong. She's going to kill me for this. And she would put flowers in it. And she told me it was a vase. And I said, well, why does it have an extra hole? And she goes, so it makes it easier to water, so I don't spill it when I put it through the top. And I'm like, oh, that's
Funny.
brilliant, Mom. So for like 15 years of my life, I thought my mom had the coolest vase on earth. And
That
she
so
kept
funny.
flowers in it. She kept flowers in it always. So it's just, and looking back now as a grown adult, I can laugh at some of that stuff and be like, that wasn't a vase, and
But you know what's
those
really
weren't
interesting?
cigarettes, What's
Is
that?
the younger people really understand the concept as a plant medicine,
Right.
and they didn't even get it in school. So they
No, you're right.
This whole year with COVID, right? So many people started on CBD because they realized they have anxiety, and you had talked about anxiety and pain. Pain and poverty and anxiety can kill you.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things I noticed with a lot of people who suffer from anxiety, but they have pain, they're the first ones to call and complain about the product. They'll say, it didn't work. I said, oh, okay, when did you get it? Oh, yesterday. I said, okay, have you read anything about it? Did you read the insert in the package? Did you speak to the salesperson at the store?
Right.
Yes,
You
it
gotta
didn't
ask
work.
questions.
I'm still in pain.
I think people think that one formula fixes everything, and then one dose fixes everything, or one amount is the same for everyone. You and I both know it doesn't matter how much you weigh, it doesn't matter how old you are, it's how your body processes cannabinoids, it's how your endocannabinoid system is functioning. So I
And
love
I
to hear
switch
stories.
products too. I don't
Yep.
just stay, like I'll do my drops for a while, the sleep formula drops. Those are really light. I will say that when I take the gummies, they are deeper because it's got melatonin in it. And I
Right.
took one last night and I'm tired. I'm a little tired this morning, but I switch off, and a lot of people will get CBD. I know it because I've worked with them, and they'll say it didn't work. Well, what about it didn't work? I know it's not like Tylenol, because people want to take a Tylenol and get rid of their headache, or they want to take, a medicine for that. What was it that particular person was looking?
Well, and then let's think about all the things that it works for you. So it worked for your anxiety, it worked for your sleep, it worked for your PTSD, it got you off some of your meds, and it got you functioning again to where you even said, I'm good. It was one of the first things you said on the call is, I'm good. I'm good.
I was never good. My whole life, I
love to hear that. So, when women watch this, and for those of you out there, every woman that I interview, every single one has a story. Every single one has a journey like Ellen. And I love that every single one gets on these calls with me and these interviews and says, I'm good. And that's all any of us as women in the industry want for all of you. We want you all to be good, if not great.
If someone has been using CBD and they didn't get, the results that they were maybe looking for, I always say, have you been on it for 3 months? It took
And
me.
it depends. Like I've noticed some people feel results immediately. Some people take longer. It depends on what you're taking it for. But it is just, it's awesome. So I know your time is valuable, so we're going to wrap up today. But for those of you watching, we're going to do another interview with Ellen. I'm actually going to go to her facility, so you can see a little bit of the inner workings of how Prime Sunshine's working. And we're going to do a full interview introducing her product line, talking a little bit more about her formulations, the different products she carries, and why she's ventured into those different areas. So if you like that, comment, stay tuned, but look for that also on our Greenies page as well as our YouTube page. And that interview will be a little bit longer and a little bit more in depth. So
and I want to let your viewers know, okay, that it all CBD is not equal. And when you go to a store like Heather's,
do your homework.
Listen to them. It may not be what you may have gone in for gummies, but they may be recommending a full spectrum. Listen to them. There are very few people that I would consider an expert in this field. Heather is an expert. And it's not like you and I woke up and said, oh, we're going to be experts, but Heather is an expert. And that is the difference. When you walk into some of these vape smoke shops, you have no idea. It's probably coming from China. know what you're putting in your body.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I would recommend. There's
Thank
a big
you for
difference
that.
of what you're going to find at your store.
Thank you. And Ellen, thank you for being so candid today and sharing your story and opening up and letting people know. I think sometimes when people see women like us in industries like this, they think, oh, they've got it all. We all came from something that pushed us outside our comfort zone that led us to a whole new path. And that's,
You followed your heart.
yeah.
You followed your heart. I followed my heart. I didn't make a conscious decision to do that, but I know you did.
So
Because
it's
you
beautiful.
actually stated to me what you were going to do a couple of years before you actually did it.
Yeah, I was on a mission to change the way people saw this plant, and I'm not going to stop.
I love it. Keep
Not gonna stop.
helping people.
So thank you,
so
Ellen.
much. All right,
I honor you. Once again, Ellen is the owner and founder of Prime Sunshine. You can learn more about her on primesunshine.com, and we'll also put a link to her site, and you can look at her products on our site as well. Until then, have a great week. We will see you guys next Wednesday for our next interview with Women in Weed. Bye, y'all.
Bye.